are back with the Buffalonian podcast. I'm Joe Callie. As always, I'm joined by none other than Dom Loss and special guest once again in studio.
Recurring guest,
friend of the program, if you will, Evan Harrington. How are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Just got out of classes, 2 times in about the last month here, and recurring guest. Thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, no problem. We're looking forward to it. We haven't spoken since the draft. The thoughts have marinated, to say the least. We've seen a lot of thoughts circulating around the old interweb, so we want to attack those a little bit as well. But I guess let's get it kicked off here with just some on the surface general thoughts, initial reactions to the picks. Coleman right off the bat. The Bills trade. Did we kind of call the Bills trading out of round one? Maybe we did. Not like our best mock draft we did was them trading out of round one. But what were your initial thoughts, Tom?
Brandon Beane found the dusted off the trade down button and didn't trade up a single time. No, I think given the situation that they were never really going to trade in the top 10, 2 mocks that we did, obviously we both agreed that trading down, and in our mock we got Lam McConkey at 37, so
Chargers got him
at 34. But instead of another mock that we did that we actually picked Worthy at 28, definitely like this option better of getting at least moving up from one of those 4th round picks, or actually technically it was a 5th round pick because it was 133, but moving up into the 3rd round was always the most beneficial option. Obviously we'll discuss a lot about the individual picks, but for me, other than the Coleman pick, listen, they fill needs, which is, I think, anyone could have picked it. Hey, they're going to draft a wide receiver. They needed a 3rd safety. They needed a rotational defensive tackle, a backup running back. Do I feel like maybe those guys might have got drafted around like a pick slot earlier? Maybe, so maybe the value's like at a B instead of an A.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a situation like to make a good baseball team, you can't always go for the home run hitter, the swings and misses. You got to get people, you got to have
Juan Soto.
You got to have people that are going to get on base, maybe not get cheeks and seats, but, will get on the bases and give you a professional at bat.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess that's what the other picks. One of them is literally called Mr. Duke. So
yeah. Also, they all seem like genuinely good dudes. Coleman's introductory press conference, what a wild ride that was, from snacks to doing the Undertaker out of the cryo chamber, everything. Wild.
He seems like your kind of guy.
He does. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, obviously with this draft, the Buffalo Bills traded back twice within the first round and ending them picking Keon Coleman at pick 33, the first pick of the second round. And obviously you had Brian Thomas Jr., who was the top wide receiver, I believe, left on Brandon Beane's big board. And that's when I knew that the Bills were going to trade back, is when the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Thomas at 23. After that happened, I knew the Bills weren't trading up in the first round, and they were just going to kind of let the board fall, and they traded back a couple times, let the board fall to them, and that was Keon Coleman at 33, obviously trading with the Chiefs and then trading back a second time. But I like the pick, man. You can't really go wrong getting a guy like Keon Coleman right at the end of, or at the beginning of the second round, and you don't have to pay him first-round money, which I think is huge. You're saving a little bit on the cap, and obviously you're bringing in a guy that's going to fill your X spot.
Yeah, a lot of people initially, when they saw the Bills trade out of round one and the Chiefs, especially with the Chiefs taking Worthy, that was, I knew uproar was about to happen in the Twitterverse. Let's just say that. I saw it coming. Maybe at first I was a little jarred because then, we had our guy, Lad McConkey, we liked, right? But
if the Chiefs still weren't taking Worthy with that pick, though, and they took Lad or they picked another receiver, I don't think there would be as much uproar. It's the fact that they took the guy with 4.2 speed.
Yeah, but then again, the guy with 4.2 speed who wasn't really touted as a first-round pick until that happened. You know what I'm saying? And if you look at Coleman in the combine, yeah, he ran a 4.61, all right? We're not going to skate around that at all, okay? DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.63, okay? If you look at his game speed and the drill where they're running across the field and catching, right? I don't know the specific name for it.
Gauntlet.
The gauntlet, whatever, yeah. He maintained about 20 miles an hour in a straight line while turning left and right, catching footballs, where everyone else was kind of weaving it around 13 to 15. So, he put on a little more of a show in that aspect, and so what? It's a 4.61 40-yard dash. I could care less.
And you know what he also said during his presser was that he can out-physical you. He's just bigger than you, and he said, if you're going to be up on me, good luck. I'll beat you down the field. Because, again, a lot of speed is due to created separation at the line due to physicality. And Keon Coleman, 6'4", you see the guy's build, you're not going to out-physical him at the point at the start of the route.
Right.
I think he's going to win those battles 9 out of 10 times, and he's going to create that separation. And like you mentioned, the drill where he's just running in a straight line, 20 miles an hour with that physicality, that's where the separation is going to be in play, and a lot of that is due to his strength, physicality, with his speed downfield consistently.
I mean, the dude was a basketball player at Michigan State, so I think he has some experience boxing
And he shops
out.
at Macy's. All right, that's another. That's
Big
another
Macy's fan as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on him being 0?
I love it. I love the 0. I do. And then we'll go through the other numbers.
Well, I will say, I think of Coleman, the most overrated thing that people will focus on is the 40-yard dash because it's not a football. Like that never happens in football. You never get 40 yards. No physical contact. No having to run a stick. You have to angle your sometimes
it's not track and field.
It's somewhat overrated. The gauntlet is a better view, and he had a top. You see Troy Franklin who fell in the draft. His gauntlet, he was weaving up and down like that. He didn't run in a straight line.
Yeah.
Coleman has that athleticism where I think there's NGS who does analytics for athleticism. He was graded 96.9, which was tied for top in the class.
Yeah.
In terms of athleticism, I think with Malik Neighbors. So he's definitely an athlete. It just, for me, it matters of Coleman that they can refine his game to be a more dependable player in separation because he did struggle with that in college a little bit. Now, some of that is because Florida State didn't use them right, and their quarterback, Jordan Travis, who unfortunately broke his leg, kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Some of the throws that you see with him with contested catches that, his stats weren't great with contested catches were because he was open and he got thrown a bad ball and it's kind of hard to adjust. Dude only had 2 drops and nearly 100 targets as well, so he has good hands. He's your prototypical X receiver, but I think he's also a guy that many people are talking to use him right. You could play him in the X, but he's also could be a guy that works well in the slot as well, even for how big he is. So again, kind of a little versatile as well. That obviously Joe Brady will love to have on his team.
Right, and he's different from what you already have in the room. Right, Curtis Samuel, he's fast. He's going to get separation. Khalil Shakir, he's a quick little guy. Right, everyone's like, oh, we drafted Gabe Davis in the first or second round. I'm like, you drafted a way better. Way higher touted Gabe Davis than what Gabe Davis was. Gabe Davis was a lucky 5th round pick, right?
Fourth
round pick.
Yeah,
hovering in that area. I don't know. But Coleman he was a standout talent, right? And respectfully so. I'm excited to see what he does with Josh Allen. Josh Allen was the one who wanted him. I mean, he's like, you were the one I looked at and we wanted. So, I mean, you can't really argue with that, I guess, right? And Big Baller Bean had the plan. He executed. So, I don't know.
I mean, my question, though, to you guys, I guess, would be this, though.
Yeah.
Josh has always played the best when he's played with natural separators. He's a guy that doesn't, it's tough to say because he has such a great arm and he does so many things well, but he's not a guy that just, if you're not open, he's not going to rip you a 50-50 ball. It's not really what Josh does. He's kind of I see you open, I throw you open.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless he's getting, yelled at in the locker room and tries forcing it everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
But Coleman's kind of a guy, again, not really a natural separator, but a guy that, as Evan alluded to, kind of can box you out and separate late in the route.
Yeah.
Do you think that has obviously it's a new skill set that they haven't had, but Josh also really hasn't had success with that skill set in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, like Joe mentioned earlier, Keon Coleman is a newer style receiver to this wide receiver room. Curtis Samuel is one of the better separators in the NFL. Khalil Shakir has developed his game as a separator and may become one of the better separators in the NFL. Dalton Kincaid is on his way to being one of the best separation tight ends in the NFL. James Cook is a running back that can work in space and in the field, and he's very good at getting separation as a running back. Let's diversify the wide receiver core a little bit. Keon Coleman, more of that traditional X that could be a big body wide receiver, take double coverage down the field, box guys out, play a little different style, work the sideline, work the boundary. That's something that Samuel, Shakir, etc., they're not the best at because they're more separators in the middle of the field. They can work the outside a little bit, but Keon Coleman can really work that sideline. Again, also a big body in the red zone.
Well, that's where a pick like Lad McConkey, right? You're just kind of getting what you.
I think it's another Khalil Shakir.
Yeah,
almost at that point.
Like that's kind of where I was at on draft day, thinking about it. It's just like are you really going to just
redundant?
You're gonna get the same guy you already have on the roster. You got to diversify a little bit, and they did. So while initially I was like, oh, the Chargers got McConkey, he was on our whatever because of our mock draft, right? Like we had whatever thought. I'm the more I marinate this Keon Coleman thought in my head, the more I'm very excited about it.
I mean, it's a new skill set. The Bills haven't really had that skill set. Obviously, you alluded to Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis was never really a physical receiver.
He was so inconsistent.
He's inconsistent. But could win down the field, but he wasn't like necessarily like the most physical receiver ever. But yeah, I just think it's going to be interesting because again, Josh really hasn't had success with these type of receivers.
But has he ever really had a receiver like this?
That's what I'm saying. Like I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword where it's like it's
going to be a trial
run.
He's
never had success,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't know if it's going to work. But he's never really been gifted this kind of physical, athletic beast. I mean, again, like Stephon Diggs, great player,
great route runner.
Was like what, a 4.6 guy, maybe a little
4.51. I believe.
Yeah, 4.5, something like low 5. Like again, Gabe Davis, kind of the 4.5. Like they haven't had. I know Coleman's 4.61, but like in game athleticism, like
tenth of a second.
Yeah, in game athleticism, like he's probably the most athletic the Bills wide receiver they've had
all around,
all around.
for sure.
And honestly, the only other
he hurdles people too. I think that was a pull for Josh Allen.
Yes, right. I think the only other physical receiver the Bills have really had here in Buffalo was Kelvin Benjamin during Josh's rookie year. But like that was it. Like that's what we're working off of. And if we're thinking, saying big and physical, Dawson Knox. I know he's a tight end, but look at the success Josh and Knox have had. I mean, Knox had 10+ touchdowns just a couple years ago. Like,
so, and then maybe he'll have that again coming off a wrist injury.
Scores the first touchdown every single playoff run for the Bills.
Yeah, he does.
But no, I think the biggest winner though in this entire scenario definitely is, also looking at the entire draft, is definitely Dalton Kincaid. Like it's passing option 1 will be him now. And so I may not be getting a Kincaid jersey now because the Edmonds jersey is run dry, but I just had to say, the stupidest take ever is saying that the Bills should just stay at 28 to pick Keon Coleman instead of trading back to quote unquote help the Chiefs, right? Because we don't know what would have happened,
right? Who knows?
And trading out of the first round. Trading out of the first round was smart because, as Evan alluded to, financially, like
you're saving a few $1 million.
You save a few $1 million of time, and you save $600,000 in a year that you're kind of cap strapped.
Yeah, and
the 5th-year option is not as valuable to non-quarterback positions. So really, losing the 5th-year option is tough, but the cap that you're saving, I think and also to get another asset to move up a little bit in the later rounds, I think that was incredibly smart business. And then the trade down of Kansas City, like we knew they wanted to add a 3rd-round pick. Brandon Beane alluded to it on the combine, how he was upset that they got screwed out of the comp pick, that they thought they were going to get 3rd round. So you knew that they were interested in that kind of trade. So it doesn't surprise me that they did it. Am I surprised that they did it with the Chiefs? Sure, but do I respect at the same time? Kind of. Like, I mean, I don't know if I would have done it, but
listen,
I respect
Brandon
the balls
Beane,
to do it.
That's why they call him Big Baller.
Yeah. He said, he's like, we're not thinking about it rivalry wise. It's just
what's the best thing for the Bills.
Yeah, and listen, I think they got the best thing for the Bills, and you know what? As much as Worthy was highly touted after that 4.21, is that what he ended up running? Yeah, 4.21.
Fastest all time.
Fastest of all time. Again, back to my point, he wasn't that before that happened. So like, you're looking for your next Tyreek Hill. That's what the Chiefs are looking for.
Let's also just remember, outside of Tyreek Hill, what have the Chiefs done with guys with speed? Like realistically, McCole Hardman, like that was a 2nd-round pick. Like they didn't really do much with him.
Yeah.
Sky Moore. Like he's still in develop. Kadarius Toney, they got him from New York. Like he caught a couple.
Guy. I mean,
he caught the touchdowns in the Super Bowl, but realistically, that was more scheme than actual player being the player. Outside of Tyreek Hill, man, like the Chiefs have not really been able to develop these speedsters into number 1 wide receivers. I'm not saying the Chiefs haven't been successful. They got the hardware to argue with
back it up.
Yeah, back it up and argue with me. But when we're talking just actual wide receiver production. How they translate to the NFL, they haven't been able to do that. And I'm not saying Worthy won't be successful in the NFL, but I would like to take, the track line that we got there.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Bills weren't going to pick him at 28.
Yeah,
if they were going to stay there. It's not like the Bills trade. It's not like Brian Thomas was on the board and the Bills traded down and the Chiefs took him. Like that, I think would be
absurd.
Looking at it now, would you guys rather have had Brian Thomas or Keon Coleman? Like now, what we know about Keon Coleman to what we knew about Brian Thomas.
So, I think from a player versus player perspective, I would take Brian Thomas. But from an asset perspective, I would take what they did with Keon Coleman because Bean alluded to in his press conference that like the Jags dropped down from 17 to 23, and to jump them to go to 22, they needed to trade their 28 and 60, their second round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So then they would have been waiting till 128. So they would have drafted like 22 and at 100 picks later. You would have missed out on maybe Dwayne Carter, who we'll talk about in a second, or Cole Bishop.
Yeah.
So would you rather have the Bills draft minus those two players and switch Coleman for Thomas, or would you rather have the Bills draft as it is? And I think I would rather have this draft than that. As much as I love Brian Thomas.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I have nothing more to add. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just the more I find out and the more I see Keon Coleman, the more I'm liking it. I'm gonna be honest with you.
The dude's a character.
I'm just,
he's gonna be a good locker room presence for the Bills.
I'm jealous. I think Matt Bove tweeted it out because he was the one who shot the video of him going to the cookie jar after the presser.
Yeah,
those cookies are good.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
he tweeted it out that it's going to be really fun to cover this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm jealous about. All the reporters and the journalists that get to cover Keon Coleman throughout his time here in Buffalo.
Drama free, maybe.
We'll
see.
You know, you should be jealous about Matt Bove. The fact that he tweeted out that the video of the Macy's, the coats illustration, that got like 20 million views on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it now.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Twitter.com and X, yeah.
But
he's a standout. He really is. I mean, just his character too. So I'm excited. I really am.
Moving on though to the other day two. I was gonna say moving on to day two, but then I forgot that they
the other day two.
They drafted Keon Coleman on day two, with Bishop and Carter.
I knew Kincaid was going to get his hand in there for Utah somewhere. And
I know.
Just so happened to be Cole Bishop.
Listen, Cole Bishop is kind of your typical kind of downhill safety. He can cover tight ends. Maybe not so much the free safety that Hyde was, but maybe more of a Poyer replacement. So,
yeah, I like that though.
But we knew safety was an option because they needed. I mean, Mike Evans on a 1-year deal. They re-signed Taylor Rapp to that 3-year deal, but that's really more of a. They could play 1 year of him, and if he doesn't perform, they could cut him and with little dead cap. So that's technically really a 1-year prove-it deal as well.
Yeah.
So you needed a long-term solution. So I'm happy with the pick. That just seems like a solid pick to me. The Dwayne Carter pick, as I alluded to with you're not picking the guy because he's going to put cheeks in seats, but he could like get a professional at bat. He's solid. Like you needed again, kind of similar to the safety position. You needed a long-term needed defensive tackle of Daquan Jones getting up there in age. Pairing with Ed Oliver, sure.
Mm-hmm. And he's got leadership experience as well.
Yeah, he was a 3-year captain, which
Yeah.
I don't think has ever been done in Duke's history or what is it, NCAA history.
Yeah.
It's one of
a
the
4-year captain, I think.
Yeah, he was 4 years.
Was it maybe 4 years?
Yeah,
But
he was every season. He was, I think.
All these guys are high character guys, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've ever.
It's a very McBean draft. I will say that.
But like,
you know what I mean? Like in a good way.
Even still, like we always credit Brandon Bean on his drafts and the character guys that he brings in, but I don't think I've ever seen a draft from the first pick to the last pick where there's just 3 or more good things to say about the player. Like there's just, this guy did this. He was involved in charity. He, was good with the youth in college, and he was a spokesperson for this, that, and the third. He was
While
a captain.
also being a high level player at the same
like,
time. Yeah, like it's just
you really got to credit Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott.
they did the research. They knew who they were going for. That board they had in the draft room.
They know a lot more than us. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
but also
us couch drafters.
With them drafting these two positions, like it was like listen, Cole Bishop obviously was BPA because they said that was their only 2nd round grade left. And they were trying to trade up for him, and Dwayne Carter, obviously was the pick at the time. I just think it's a little interesting because we talked so much about how the safety class maybe not has a lot of quality, like Mika Fitzpatrick or Derwin James, but has a lot of quantity. Like you could draft one later. So I'm a little surprised that they spent a 2nd round pick on one, just because you maybe could have waited till round 3 or 4 and drafted another quality safety like Cam Kitchens or something like that. And then again, Carter's a solid defensive tackle. I don't think he's going to again hit bombs for you, but he'll get on base and he'll be immediately these first really 4 picks. You can make it a case 5 picks that the Bills took all are going to be contributors right away in some facet, which is exciting.
Yeah, and speaking about the Cole Bishop pick, this is the first time in Sean McDermott's career that he can really start with a homegrown safety that he can work with in the back end, because we have been accustomed to having Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer in the back end for the time that they were here. And Sean McDermott does not get enough credit, in my opinion, for how good he is at developing defensive backs, him being one himself. And we see what he can do with cornerbacks, Taron Johnson, Tre'Davious White, Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, Christian Benford, the list goes on and on. I want to see what he can do with Cole Bishop. I believe Sean McDermott had a big part in the development of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Obviously, they were in the league for a little bit before they came here, but he obviously elevated their game. And I think he can do some wonders with Cole Bishop.
Yeah, and I mean, Micah Hyde, Brandon Beam was speaking about him the other day. They're talking, and it's you know what's going to happen. He's still having the softball game here. I don't think he'll come back and play, but he might still be involved in the team in one way or another. He loves the area and the Buffalonians around here, so that'd be nice to see. I'm a big Micah Hyde guy. Just a good dude, genuinely. So
first time that they spent significant capital at safety.
Yes,
as again Evan alluded to, he's done a great job of cornerbacks. This is the first time they've really made a significant asset into safety, because they didn't have to. They had 2 All-Pros.
Yeah.
The only time that they really drafted safeties was Jawan Johnson and DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, that's right.
And he made both those guys serviceable players who are
DeMar Hamlin was third on the team in tackles.
Yeah. Going to probably be a career backup the rest of his career, and he made him a serviceable, at least an average safety, which is interesting to see.
The guru, essentially, right? I mean, it's just Bishop will be wearing 24, I think, and then Kyrie Elam switched to 5. So
yeah, that's a disgusting number. 5, excuse me. 24 is a sick number.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say.
5 is kind of like
gross. Jalen Ramsey, bleh. That's kind of what I think, Right. But
looking at the rest of the draft, though, who out of this next group, Davis, Van Granger. I'm not even going to pronounce the linebacker's name. I apologize. I'm not gonna. Washington linebacker. That's UW linebacker. We're gonna call him. Solomon, who had 16 sacks, I believe, or something like that for Troy, and Grable, the UCF tackle. Hardy, who's going to be kind of that maybe backup nickel return guy, had a couple return touchdowns, and they did draft offensive tackle out of Europe who's never played in the NFL, but kind of. If you're in the 7th round, you might as well swing for a guy that doesn't even count against your roster. So
hey, what if he becomes the next Jordan Mailata?
That's what I'm saying. Why the hell not? But
it might be.
Which pick is obviously Davis seems to be kind of like that backup complement to James Cook. Van Granger is probably going to be up. You need a backup center. Maybe this pushes Connor McGovern, so you have a backup plan in case he gets injured. We saw a backup center kill the Bills with the Dolphins game 2 years ago. So that's interesting. Backup linebacker, you lose Medikevich, so that's kind of your need replaced. Edge, we'll see if he makes the team, but then the other guys kind of, as you allude to, offensive tackle, they like to...
Solomon's favorite player, idol, I'm pretty sure, was Von Miller.
Yep, he said that. And then Hardy could make the team as the returner, because the Bills cut Deontay Hardy, not to think of this guy, because it's Hardy, not HRTY.
Yeah.
But what are you guys' thoughts on who do you think out of this group was the best pick made by Bean?
I like the edge rusher. I like Solomon a lot. Because Von Miller, truthfully, let's be honest, off-field things aside, wasn't the greatest coming off the ACL. I'm not saying he might not be, right? It took Tre'Davious White a long time, a season and a half, really, to get back to what he looked like. So fingers crossed, as Evan Harrington's in here throwing the finger crossed in the air. Fingers crossed that he can get back to that and be a solid mentor for Javon Solomon, being his, idol or whatever. But I think you kept AJ Epinesa, right? You lost Leonard Floyd, right? So you had to add a little bit there, and that would be the other position where I was big on adding somebody. So the Javon Solomon, I'm a big fan of, and you know who else I'm a big fan of? After the draft, Frank Gore Jr. He was on our mock draft. I just have to say, so that was exciting.
Wait, you guys had the Bills taking Frank Gore Jr. in the 7th round,
last couple rounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey,
so look at that manifestation at its finest right there.
Hit on that one.
So. My favorite draft pick within the players that you mentioned is actually Ray Davis, the running back out of Kentucky. I'm pretty sure he's the only running back in NCAA history to rush 1,000 yards in 3 straight seasons with 3 different teams because he was on 3 different teams in college.
Yeah.
And he reminds me of a more explosive, big play Devin Singletary. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Ray Davis reminds me of. Ray Davis doesn't have the home run speed of a Saquon Barkley or a prime Dalvin Cook or I'm trying to think of another back on the top of my head here. Derrick Henry, I guess, against Jacksonville. But Ray Davis, he's a very explosive back that can, split through the tackles, get through the holes. He's got good contact balance. He's a bowling ball that can move downfield. I like the pick, honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say.
What's your guy? I mean, you posed the question. What do you got?
I like the center, the Georgia because again, I think backup center was kind of a sneaky need, especially you're kind of doing somewhat of a risk having McGovern kind of moved to center, which he hasn't played in a couple years. So having
a backup
having
plan.
one of the better center prospects fall to you and selecting him,
he could also be a day 1 player.
Yeah, I mean, he's Mitch Morse kind of esque. Not maybe the most physically empowering guy, but the guy is athletic.
Could be a young guy you pair with Josh and carry through a long career together. So
and
he's
a captain too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's a leader.
You can say that about like every single player. It's captain.
Yeah,
but also if Van Gager, it's important for him to understand that he's got to be a little left off center. That was Mitch Morris's snapping position. Mm-hmm. The backup centers behind Mitch Morris must have really struggled with that because Josh could never get a
what was his? Who was it? Van Rotten.
Yeah,
that was bad. We were at that Titans game where Morse got injured, and then they went to Miami, and it was a big problem. That was a major issue.
So
the one in Nashville.
No. The 45 to 7.
41 to 7.
41 to 7, whatever
Monday
it was.
Football
Monday Night Football.
So, it's definitely a very interesting kind of day 3 draft. I think their best overall 2 moves in the draft probably, I just like the Clayton story of the European rugby player, but
I would love to see that come to fruition.
I think the best move that they actually made in the entire draft, not even regarding draft picks, is that they traded a 5th-round pick, I believe it was pick 144 this year, back to the Bears for their 4th next year. That's just good business in my mind. That's going to be a pick that's probably going to be middle of the 4th round.
Yeah.
So that pick is probably going to be in the 120, 115 range. So you basically moved up 25, 30 slots in next year's draft, which you may like better. And it's also more ammunition to kind of be a little bit more aggressive. I think the story of this draft is leadership because captain. Mm-hmm. They filled important needs like wide receiver, third safety, D tackle, backup center. They filled needs that they needed on their roster today, and also those guys have potential to make long-term, successes as well. But I think this is kind of a setup draft. Brandon Bean has talked about, this is your take your medicine year. This is we had to redo our cap, we had to get younger, and with that they had to add leadership and they had to add the right guys. Mm-hmm. I feel like they did that in this draft. Do I think it's a home run draft? Do I think it's an A draft? No, because I think some of the value of taking Ray Davis when there's other maybe better running backs with the board, or taking DeJuan Carter or Cole Bishop when maybe you could have waited another round, another pick to maybe get another impact player. But for me, it's just a typical B solid draft, but it sets them up now for 25 when you have year 1, you have Minnesota's 2, year 2, you added Chicago's 4.
And your cap hit's way less. Yeah,
better cap hit
Diggs.
and ammunition.
Yeah.
I just think they're in a great spot now for 25. This is a setup draft.
Yeah. And it's a setup draft, which puts them in a position to still be a contender this season.
Yes.
So, listen, what's your letter grade? Dom said B. What's your letter grade? What would you give them? I'd say B+. I would give a little plus on the end of it because what I said. It's a setup draft, but it's a draft that still puts you in the contender position that you've been in for the past few years, and maybe even a better position.
So, I would give it a B if they only had 7 picks.
Mm-hmm.
But since they had 10 draft picks, and it looks like these are a lot of guys that can be on the roster past 1 year, that's why I'm going to give it a B+.
Mm-hmm.
10 draft picks, and you can argue the first 5 could be day 1 starters, and there's some dark horses in the back 5.
Yeah.
I think the first 5 alone.
I mean, the tackle from England could or Europe, wherever he's from, could be one of the best tackles in the NFL. We have no idea. You know
It's
what I mean?
really boom or bust.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
boom is like, dude, he's a freak of nature.
Yeah.
Like, he's a big time athlete.
Yeah.
He ran like a 4.71 at the
my
40.
God.
Like, dude, it was like either like a 4.7.
He was on Keon Coleman's heels in the 40-yard dash.
Yeah, right.
Dude,
yeah.
imagine like
He's sniffing the rubber on the bottom of the shoe there. Yeah.
maybe we'll put him in wide receiver, 6'7"
Can you
wide out.
imagine? Oh my God. What a
Jeez.
tank on the field that would
And
be.
he's just a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So B plus B plus B.
So then I have two draft-related questions, somewhat draft-related questions because they're kind of off-season questions, but they're related around what kind of happens, conspires after the draft now.
Do you think Frank Gore Jr. is going to be a Hall of Famer?
I mean,
Is the question?
not with the Bills, unfortunately. I don't think he's making the team. But out of the now I gotta recount because I blanked on how many people I counted as Evan was talking, and now 4 or 5, 10. You're right. Out of the 10 picks, over under set at 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
People making the draftees making the roster.
Ooh.
Over under 6.5.
This is just main roster.
Just made the 53. Not practice squad. The practice squad counts as that out.
Okay. I'll say over.
Yeah,
Maybe by one. You know what I mean? Like not a huge margin, one or two. Like not all 10. Like don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of these guys do have, day one playability. I would say over 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I think the first 5 are locks. I think Travis Clayton is gonna be on the practice squad, so that really leaves 4 picks.
For the 50-50, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and especially in
I
the,
could see.
the
I could
defense
see,
though.
I could see Solomon making it.
Solomon and even Hardy. I mean, is the returner, right?
I think
Potentially.
Yeah.
that's where it kind of is. Like I think the first 5 are kind of locks is a strong word because they could absolutely suck in camp. Like
It's not a mortal lock.
it's not a
just
mortal
lock.
lock, but the remaining 5, like the Washington linebacker, kind of is the maybe your again Medikevich replacement. So I think maybe he's kind of more in special teams. And then obviously Clayton, I would agree, is kind of like he's not going to make the roster. So then out of the next 3 of Solomon, Grable, Hardy, one of them has to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you bet on it? Would I bet my life on it? No. Do I think it's more likely than not? Sure, because I just think
In a rotational defense, my money would be on Solomon.
rotational
that,
defense. Grable kind of I think is going to get cut, but I mean he's probably going to be facing against Ryan Vandermark for backup tackle, so maybe he beats him out for that spot. And then Hardy again, backup nickel is kind of a position we don't have a guy if Taryn goes down really, especially if losing Saran Neal, and they do need a returner. So yeah, I would bet over, but I would be. I would not.
It's a hesitant.
I would
bet.
hold my nose a little bit, but
Yeah.
The last question I have regarding the draft is: this now sets up for June 1st, right? We're now a month away from June 1st. Which
Yeah, literally a month away from recording.
Which when Trey White, $10 million of savings comes in, so there'd be about 12. Obviously, I know some of that is going to have to come to the draft picks because they need to have some money for the draft picks. Obviously, it's not. If they make if we think 7 dudes are going to make the 53-man roster for the draft, like that obviously takes up some salary cap.
Yeah.
So they might have, I would say, one swing, like the Leonard Floyd swing to make maybe.
Yeah.
What position would you say the Bills have to have that swing?
I would say probably.
Like, is it another receiver? Is it like a edge, or is it?
I would say probably a receiver. They drafted the edge rusher, and I think you might add one, but you never know. I would say maybe go after a receiver on a vet minimum deal with, something along the lines of a incentive-based thing. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like a Von Miller.
Kind of like Leonard Floyd's
Yeah,
contract.
yeah, exactly. That's what I would say.
I could see the Bills going after Zay Jones. Like, he just got released by Jacksonville the other day. Former Buffalo Bill, obviously played with Josh Allen in his rookie year. He's familiar with Josh. I wouldn't hate the Bills bringing him in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's intriguing because I think they're kind of good with the receiver. They like him, and I think they do need another receiver. Like MVS would be a nice contract, just because he's kind of like that vertical deep threat.
Yeah,
That they may be missing. Maybe you get OBJ to come in, kind of as an incentive-based deal to be like the wide receiver 4.
Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of add a veteran. I think they'd go edge, though, because I think you need to hedge a little bit with Vaughn more than they have. Like, getting AJ's chill, but AJ's also been a guy that's kind of faded at the end of the years and been banged up. Even Groot, who, congrats to him, just got his 5th-year option picked up.
Yeah, there you go.
But he's also a guy that's kind of had some injury concerns as well. And obviously Von Miller is the biggest injury concern with that knee. So I think they're going to add another edge because I think they need a 4th edge to kind of – and they're also, as you alluded to, rotational. So I think everyone's going to be champing at the bit for another receiver, but I think it's going to be an edge.
Okay. No, I like it. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens because how much of that cap is really going to go towards the draft picks? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, luckily, again, they saved themselves a little bit by trading out of the first, so it's a good thing.
$600,000.
Yeah. So any closing thoughts here? Any extras we want to throw in about the Bills draft? I mean, I thought it was all around solid. It was an important one, and I think they delivered on a lot of things. So I'm happy. They got the wide receiver with their first pick. So, I mean, the train didn't pull into the station. Don't get me wrong. That everyone was wanting, I guess, right? The wide receiver train.
But I think it will just be interesting. In years past, the bottom of their drafts have not made the roster because the roster has been full and they've had a lot of veterans in those places where you would hide day 3 picks. I shouldn't say hide day 3 picks, but day 3 picks play special teams. The Bills valued special teams for so long with veterans, and now they're kind of getting younger on special teams now because they had to do with the cap and just the age of the roster. So again, we talked about 6.5 over under. I just think that's the storyline for me is how many of these guys are going to make the roster this season and how many of these guys can make an actual starting impact for the roster this season in 24 and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, overall, my closing remarks on the draft is that, once again, how many guys will make this draft or make the team from this draft? But I'm excited to see the first 5 picks. Those are the 5 players I'm really excited to see. Obviously, Keon Coleman being paired up with Josh as the X. I want to see how Ray Davis is going to be paired up in the backfield with James Cook. Cole Bishop, he's going to be touted to be the starting safety. More likely than not week 1. Cedric Van Granger, he might, push McGovern to the left guard spot. There are a lot of exciting camp battles that rookies are going to be a part of that we really haven't had too often the last couple of years. We've had the first, few picks, but when you're looking at the 5th round pick, the 6th round pick, the late 4th round pick, those are going to be guys fighting for starting spots through training camp that I'm really excited about from this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's time now we pivot a little bit here from the NFL draft and let us know what you think about our thoughts. I mean, might be a little different than what you're seeing around, but Evan, we got to talk about the Sabres landing Lindy Ruff as their new head coach, and we want to get your thoughts on it, I guess, in this quick tidbit here and see what you think. I mean, is it just a nostalgic thing, or do you think it's gonna be better for the franchise?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to look at it. If you're a fan, I think it's a nostalgia hire. But realistically, I think this is a move to bolster the franchise forward. I think hiring Lindy Ruff will pay dividends for this team. I really think this team needed that extra boost, the next coach. I was always in favor of Don Granato, and I still think Don Granato is a good coach, and in the sense that given the right year, things were going the right way. I think Granato could have been the coach to get him over the hump, but
yeah,
this is a young team and they need to move forward. And this team needs that coach to move them forward right now. And I think that coach is Lindy Ruff. And Lindy Ruff is already in Buffalo. He's had conversations over the phone with Rasmus Dahlin. He's been in person with Dylan Cousins, Owen Power, Bowen Byram. I mean,
Alex Tuck,
barefoot
in the locker room or the weight room with him.
Yeah. Tage Thompson he's talked to as well a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm excited for Lindy Ruff. I really think he is going to be the coach to finally get the Buffalo Sabres over the hump into the playoffs.
Yeah, listen. Tuck was excited when they asked him about it in locker cleanout. He's like, "Oh man, I grew up watching that guy. Like that'd be amazing." And a couple days later, there it was. So I like it. I wasn't fully on board with it. I'm still not all in.
I wasn't ecstatic going this is going to be the Sean McDermott hire.
Yeah.
This is going to be the guy that
Dom knows. He says I was out. I'm like I was 1.5 feet out the door.
I think I'm if you would do a happiness scale with the hire, it's 70-75% happy and then 25%
uncertain. just kind of
like I don't.
I'm just glad they didn't bring up Seth Appert.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was going to happen. But I think it's a solid hire. It's going to be interesting to see who he brings in, not just for the players but the coaches as well, because they have to add a couple of coaches, I think, to behind the bench. But it's going to be
get Matt
interesting.
Ellis out of here.
They've already been rumored that they're going to look for a third line center, which I think is the biggest. After you trade Casey Middlestat for the quote unquote top 4 D-man in Byram,
Yeah.
third line center probably is the number one, the biggest need on the roster, behind having more stability behind Dylan Cousins and Tage Thompson. So when they go through, their injuries or their slumps, that you're not relying on Peyton Krebs to go out there and be your third line center.
Which I don't know why we thought that was a good idea. I like Peyton Krebs, but I don't know why we thought Peyton Krebs is a top 9 center in this league.
Yeah.
He's a nice little fourth line energy bunny.
Who do you think's in the most trouble on the roster right now? I know you just said Peyton Krebs. but-
Player?
Yeah, player-wise. Who's in the most trouble? I said Peyton Krebs last time we talked about this.
Who's going to be in the Lindy doghouse?
Yeah, who's in the doghouse?
Like Thomas Vanek was in the doghouse.
Well, so that was back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to put guys in the doghouse. Man, I don't know. Can I rephrase the question to who I think is on their way out the door?
So, I mean,
sure.
dang,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you want to go that, yeah.
Two
let's go.
players. Surprise. Number one, I'll go Henry Yoki-Haru. I just don't think they're going to re-sign him. I want to re-sign him personally because he's a right-shot defenseman, and we don't have many of those.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, Jeff Skinner. I think they might trade him for a third-line center. I'm trying to remember the player who has the similar contract to him that they can move.
So, I completely agree with you on Yoki-Haru. I think that he's out the door because I think they're going to have to pay him like $4 million, and I don't think they want to pay him $4 million because he's going to arbitration, restricted free agency. I think for Skinner, buyout is not an option in my opinion. So I think trade, as you allude to, could be, but it's basically going to be like bad contract for bad contract.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember who the player is.
I think there's two different options. One would be they could trade with the Leafs, as we allude to, trading for rivals. If John Tavares waives his no trade clause, I think Tavares has 1 year, $11 million left, and Skinner has 3 years and $9 million. I don't know why the Leafs would do that because I think that's a worse deal for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think there's one where I think this is the one you're alluding to with Sean Couturier.
Yes,
I think
that's who it was.
I think he's 6 years. I know you're looking at it right now, so but I think it's like 7.8.
Yeah, that's what it's about. It's a little.
It's like weird. It's like 8 whatever, 8.5 whatever. But so that you would get some saving, but then you would also get a longer contract on your cap. And do you have his age? Like I don't know how old he is. It's like he's got to be in his 30s, right?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Because again, Couturier is a solid defensive center. Like he's a guy that like everyone talks about being a Selke level caliber center. So actually having him into the roster completely fits the
He's
need.
31.
Yeah, so he'd be 37. So that's a big gamble, I think, because you'd add 3 years while you also saved 1.2, but then your future cap.
You're pretty much swapping a top 9 winger for a top 9 center, but then you're just adding like 4 years onto the contract.
Yeah, which I think is. I feel like there'd have to be a sweetener from the Flyers' perspective because
Need some Splenda in there.
again,
Yeah.
I think Couturier is a better fit for this team than Skinner is, and I think he's a better player than Skinner at the moment. But 3 years down the road, Jeff Skinner's a free agent. 3 years down the road, we're going to be stuck with 34-year-old Sean Couturier, who's had, I believe he had back surgery and missed an entire season. So it's not like he's been healthy. Like Jeff Skinner, as much as we could crap on him for his defense and all that, and his contract, like he's remarkably consistent with his health. Like he could be relied upon to play 75+ games. Sean Couturier is recently has been kind of a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy at times. But
Yeah.
I don't mind the Skinner. I personally, answering the question, said Dylan Cousins because I think Cousins is a guy who has the tools to be a good defensive player, but had a bad year and plays very tries to dangle everyone instead of making again.
Tries to have the saucy
He tries
dangle.
to put cheeks in seats when he just needs to get on base.
Yeah, right.
Makes
Yeah.
the easy play.
Yeah.
And I think he's the guy that Lindy will come at and be like, "Hey, you got to be more disciplined. Just chip the puck off the glass. You don't have to try and dangle through Drew Doughty at our defensive blue line."
So that's actually funny you mentioned that because I was listening to WGR Sports 550 yesterday.
I wonder who works there at SFOD.
Yeah,
I
I wonder.
wonder what the connection is there. And I was listening to the morning show, and they had Lindy Ruff on, and he was actually talking about Dylan Cousins, comparing it to Tage Thompson. He obviously alluded to Tage Thompson being the better offensive player, but then he mentioned like Dylan Cousins can be that good two-way defensive player, and he has offensive upside, but just kind of needs to hone it in. And that's kind of what you were alluding to.
Yeah.
I think adding the discipline, and also Tage is a perfect example of a guy that, I know he was banged up this year, so he didn't have quite the offensive season, but he's also a guy that was pretty solid defense. Like, he was trash defensively even 2 years ago. This year, he was a serviceable defender. So I don't think you need Dylan Cousins to be elite or Patrice Bergeron. I just think you need him to be serviceable and not be quote unquote bad. Because if you have two bad defensive centermen, like, that's going to kill you when it comes to playoff time. And granted, the Sabres have to get to the playoffs for that to really matter. But that's why I think a third-line two-way center like a Sean Couturier, even though logistically I don't know if that would fit long-term cap-wise, but a third-line center I think is still the biggest need, and I think that's the need that Lindy's really going to be every day knocking on Kevin Adams' door. We need this guy.
Yeah. You'd be like, this guy's a joke. That's what he's going to say over and over.
Or Noah Cates, who's also with the Philadelphia Flyers. He's on a pretty decent, I think he's under $3 million. He's kind of like that third line center, too. Maybe not going to give you a lot of offense, maybe going to get you 30 points a year, but is going to play special teams and is going to be able to be solid enough offensively where he could play on the third line, but give you that matchup against the top line defense.
Yeah.
Defensive shutdown center.
Yeah, listen, Lindy's it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. Again, not fully convinced until we see some on-ice product, but I'm excited. I do have a hot take for you guys.
Okay, I was about to say, I was going to ask, like, is your week?
Yep, I do have a hot take. And it's a hot one. This one is steaming, okay?
I think you said this.
No.
We said that every week, and then we're like, yeah.
No, you're not. I don't know how you're going to react to this one. It's about baseball, okay?
Okay, America's pastime.
Angel Hernandez is actually a decent thing for the watchability of the sport of baseball. On TV, getting coaches getting all freaked out. Yeah, listen.
So you think him being so bad at his job ends up turning to be a positive?
I start laughing. Aaron Boone gets thrown out for something a fan says. I'm just laughing watching it on the couch. See, I told you this one was going to be hot.
That is kind of hot.
This is hot take.
Let me chime in here. I'm not a diehard baseball fan to the fact where I'm going to sit down and watch all 162 games.
I'm not either. That's absurd.
The most baseball I've seen this year has been Shohei Ohtani, Vladdy Guerrero not being able to hit the ball past second base, and Angel Hernandez just blowing calls left and right.
Yeah.
For the watchability, dude, I agree with Joe. I actually agree with Joe. It is fun. It gets the casual viewer like myself.
Imagine a robot back there. You wouldn't get the same. Like, you get fired up watching that if you're a big fan, or you laugh at it if you're just a casual fan. You know?
I mean,
this guy stinks.
Yeah, this guy's terrible.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of baseball highlights now, because the game is so kind of predictable, I think is the best way to use it. Because it's pitch, hit. You know, basketball, you could do a bunch of different things. Football could be a bunch of different plays. So I guess having the unpredictability of an umpire screwing up, I guess that's so much really. I, as a baseball fan, would like the umpire to get the calls right. I think.
Yeah, you would like that. I think you
can still have the umpires screw. I think you can still have the umpires who screw up, but not as frequently as just consistently Angel Hernandez does.
Yeah.
But God, those umpire union mans, they have saved his job for years. But it's a hot take, because I think if you put that out there, I think people would trash, because I think everyone hates Angel Hernandez. But you are somewhat right in your take on the fact of, like, he's so bad.
It's just watchable. It's like brings you in.
But then does it, like, turn people off? Like,
that's where the other extreme is.
You might watch, like, a clip and be like, yeah, I watched it, but now I'm like, this is just an unserious league. This guy is actually, like, impacting games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, if this guy is calling strikes that are balls and like impacting people's ABs, impacting people's livelihoods. Like contracts matter, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I sound like a complete Debbie Downer because like what you said made a lot of sense, but I think people that are like, I agree with you. I think it's
watchability strictly. That's
for
where
the
I was
casual fan, definitely a positive. But for the diehards, I think that gets people so mad.
Listen, I told you it was a hot one. We didn't know how that was going to go. It was a hot one. I knew it would be. But
good for you.
Listen, I needed a hot one. They've been just warm or cold. You know what I mean? Like they've been like just they've been regular takes.
Listen, all I'm saying, the NBA last night, those high level basketball games at the end, really entertaining.
They were. So I mean, another.
I'm just saying, would you have rather watched the Knicks Sixers ending, which the Sixers were down 6 points with 30 seconds to go, tied the game, go overtime, win to force Game 6, or would you have rather seen the Leafs win in overtime in a 2-1 game? I'm just saying.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm not the biggest NBA guy, but like I'm just saying.
They were exciting.
Entertaining.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think about Angel Hernandez. That'll be an interesting conversation to have on social media. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. I mean,
I'm just gonna get him riled up over here on like credit Angel Hernandez.
Yeah.
I'm saying like he's the reason why I'm watching baseball. Like I love just watching Angel Hernandez.
You should just post that on the GR Twitter account.
Oh God, yeah.
I'll send it over. Angel Hernandez good for baseball?
Yeah.
Just have Evan
Yes, no.
like tweet it below. I'd be like, oh my God, I only watch Angel Hernandez.
Yeah, we'll just get I'll pay the bot accounts.
I don't look up the schedule for what teams are playing. I look up the umpire schedule and see what game Angel Hernandez is umping.
See, the only comments I'd get though is sexy pics, link in bio or whatever. That's all you'd get on Twitter, just the bots. But without further ado, that's going to do it for this edition of the Buffalonian Podcast. I'm Joe Callie. As always, I'm joined by Dom Loss, and thank you to Evan Harrington for joining us today. How do we always end these, fellas?
Go Bills, baby.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.